We all know that an image is worth 1,000 words, and with images, Bootstrap delivers. They give you the ability to create rounded images, circle images, thumbnails, and so on. And they've got a few new ones now with Bootstrap 4 where we can pull depending on the screen size. So we've got that pull. So before we had pull left, pull right with Bootstrap 3, but now we have the option to specify when we're pulling depending on what the breaking point. And also to make responsive images with Bootstrap 4, it's changed. So it's img-fluid, and before it was responsive. So this is Bootstrap 4, it's fluid to make them responsive. And essentially what happens is when you do create responsive image, when you make your image responsive, it doesn't hang over the allocated spacing that you might have. So if an image, typically if it's wider than what you've got available, then you run into trouble. So let's check this out and pick up an image. We can either use Lorem Pixel. So I usually like to use the images from here because these present some really nice cool images. And let's open up our pen here and just deposit an image into our content here. And I want to make this image actually really, really big, so it's not going to fit easily on our screen. And we'll see what happens now. So just save that and give it a second to load the image. And this is one of the things with Lorem Pixel, it doesn't always load very quickly when you're trying to develop. So this is another option here, is placehold it, where we can drop an image in. So let's check that out and see if this loads a little bit quicker. And the same idea here is that we can specify how wide of an image and how big of an image we want and so on. So we see that by default this image is way too large. It's taking up way too much space on our web page, and it's eating up, it's hanging over the allocated, making us have to scroll and so on. So we don't want this to happen with images, and Bootstrap really makes it easy where we can apply a class called img fluid to actually make the image fluid. And we see once we add that in, it automatically resizes. So it doesn't matter how much space is allocated to that particular container, the image will take up to 100, maximum width of 100% for that image. So it also does, essentially what it does, it adds maximum width of 100% and it heights it by auto. So you always keep those same dimensions within your images. So I did say that they did have some other options for images. So we have the option, so not only can we make it fluid, and if you're making a responsive website, you should always add that fluid in there. We can also make it rounded as well. So just give it a second for that to take place. And we see it rounds the corners. You can see it slightly there that it is rounded. So it's not really as evident because the image is so big. If I was to shrink this down, we'd probably see the rounded a little bit better. So if I did 250 by 250, we see that we got those rounded corners. We can also transform the image into a circle format, so it makes it into a circle. And we can also transform it into a thumbnail format, so it makes it represent as a thumbnail and so on. So a lot of really nice options now with Bootstrap, and I also want to give some examples of these. So I'm going to just, so thumbnail, we had circle, and we also had rounded. So those are essentially the three options that we have for images, and you should always include the fluid as well. So we do have an option to align them. So previously with Bootstrap 3, we could do something like pull right, pull left, and so on. So we notice that now with Bootstrap 4 it doesn't work, but we need to specify where we want to pull it. So depending on the screen size, we can adjust when it pulls. So we can have something like MD, where it pulls to the right if it's got available spacing. And otherwise, once we break that MD point, it actually just goes back in line with the rest of the text. So we can also specify that where we can pull to the left if we want, and so on. So maybe this one will pull to the left. So typically you'd probably be using all of the same ones here, but because this is just to demonstrate what's possible, we see that we can pull it to the left whenever we resize. So that's always pulled over to the left, but whenever we hit the breaking point, so it works opposite of the way that the grid system works, is once we hit the breaking point, then it goes back to its default location, so default positioning of the image. And this is going to work really well if you have images that are exactly maybe around that breaking point. So it's going to present in a much better fashion where whenever we are larger than the breakpoint, we pull it to the left, but when we hit that breaking point, we can align it right to the center. And typically as well, whenever we have the ability to align our text as well, so this will work as well with the images. So we take the parent container, we can do a text, and just like we're aligning depending on the position, we can do text center if we want. So previously with Bootstrap 4 or Bootstrap 3, we just do text center, but now we need to specify at what the breaking point is. So by default, it would be text XS. And we can see that now it's centering that text, that content that's being presented there. And if we want to pull it over to the right, we could do that as well. So this is just an example, similar type of example where we've got our text being pulled over to the left, to the right, and centered. And you notice as well that it falls nicely in line with the images. So if you've got all of the images there being pulled over to the right, as well as the text being pulled over to the right, it will still align really nicely. So in the next lesson, we're going to look deeper into what we can do with components within Bootstrap. So that's coming up in the next lesson.